Hey, so in my uh, quiet time this morning, shifting some things around in my routine, I talk about routines a lot um, on the blog. If you go to the search bar and put in routines, um, livinglifeofcreativity.com, it'll send you to a creative life binary. I'm still building routine topics on that blog. But if you go to the menu option, which is the three lines, usually it's at the left hand corner towards the top. If you click on that, it'll take you back to the other original archive blog of livinglifeofcreativity.com. And in that section, if you put in routines, it'll talk about all these, different versions of routines and topic matters related to routines. This morning, this entire week, I have been rethinking time, energy, routines, just kind of looking at the season for what it is and trying to think through, do I need to do things differently? And the answer was yes. There's always room for improvement, making things a little bit better. And this is not an instance of like over striving or like overachieving in the area of routines, but it's more to tap into the intuitive side of me, which was and is one of my manifestation goals that I talk about in another video. And I'll link that video where I do talk about the manifestation box in this YouTube description to give a little bit more context of that. But back to what I was saying, as I was evaluating that, I had an experience yesterday that it's a little off topic and off on a tangent, so I won't get into it today. But it did prompt me on an intuitive level, and I just kind of tapped into that. So this morning, when I was doing my, I call it morning pages. You might hear me talk a lot about an author named Julia Cameron. Well, she's actually more than an author. She has written a lot of things like plays and I think even music compositions. She's collaborated on certain things, and she has a series of books called The Artist's Way and Artist's Way. I'm actually reading a couple of the books simultaneously. I've read them independently, and then I kind of go back and pick up on the reading and tap in and kind of remind myself of practices or things that I need to remember just as a creative person, as an artist. So I highly recommend Julia Cameron books. Anyway, so this morning I was reading a version of her book. I have a book club, and this one is not the one that I'm starting with in the book club, so I'll probably talk more about this one next year as I start to develop the new book club list. And there'll be more details on that. I'll leave that in the description below for anyone who's interested in that and the details on that. It's really not a live book club where we're exchanging a whole lot of interaction between each other. It's a little bit more, if you encounter the books, along your journey and you want to read, I kind of list out what I'm reading, the months that I'm reading them in, and where to find the book if they're not in your local library. And then you can read along, and then we can exchange communication about what we're learning through either email or even the comment section of a few of the blog posts that I have that does a little bit of review on Julia Cameron and her work. So that's that. So those details will be there. So as I was reading this version, Walking in This World, The Practical Art of Creativity, there's a section in here that caught my attention in my reading this morning. So here's what it says. It says, when we insist on playing God by trying to be all powerful and all understanding and all giving in all things to all people, God can work no miracles in our lives because we never allow the time or space to let a divine hand enter our affairs. And so this little nugget is not really intended to be a blaspheming criticism of me or the person, the artist, that or the creative person, the artist that is actually reading it. Um, it's from the context of managing your energy and your time. So for me, it was kind of like a little bit of a dagger, in just my creative awareness, because so much of my time has been around it has been around creative recovery, and I use practices from here to help me through creative recovery. But I have also become aware that in doing that, everything that I've been pouring into myself, I am very, very quick to pour out, because it's the nurturing part of me. The nurturing part of creativity is to want to give and to pour out. Well, when you're in a creative recovery and trying to find stability in your intuition connected to creativity, there has to be some form of balance. There has to be a little bit more of selfishness that comes into the picture, which can be hard for creative people that are nurturing and want to pour out. So I'm just in a place where I realize that in some of my creative recovery, I have been a little too quick to try to pour out. And so one of the examples I would say that is a just tangible, real example that now that I can use is my idea of the creative group. I wanted to have a creative group online just to kind of meet up once a month and, exchange perspectives, get some creative feedback from each other, and just really encourage each other. It really wasn't the idea of making it too much of a tutorial or workshop piece. And then I decided, oh, well, it can be more than that. It can be a little bit of tutorial, workshop, or whatever. So I had put together this year-long idea of a monthly group. And to make a long story super, super short, before I even read this, I realized that there was something about that pouring out that I wasn't quite ready for on an ongoing basis. Not in that direction, not that way. And because I didn't really know what else to do with that, it may work for other people in their journey and stuff like that, but I realized that it wasn't really syncing well with mine right now in mine. So I did the next best thing, and I dissolved the idea and just said, that's not for me right now. And it doesn't mean that I won't do it in the future. It just means that something is different about this season and I need more pouring in. Now, at that time, I was not really aware of the depth of what was needed as far as the pouring in and all the whys. I just had to roll with my intuition on that and just say, doing it that way right now on that scale is not going to work for me. It feels like it's tugging and pulling more out of me than I have. Okay, so that was kind of like the subconscious chatter that didn't come to my awareness until recently. So when I read this, it prompted me to think on that. And so I was able to kind of put that together and say, oh, okay, now I understand a little bit more of what that was feeling like and why that just didn't align well. And, the participation really wasn't where I thought it was going to be after a year of kind of like promoting it, in my own way. And it was just kind of like, am I really supposed to be doing this? And maybe not, There could be all other reasons too, like, oh, maybe the marketing wasn't effective, whatever. But I feel like it just really wasn't the right timing for me to invest that type of energy in that way of pouring out right now. It just wasn't the time. So recognizing that, I said, okay, I'm going to pause. And so when I read this, what also came to mind was when it was saying, trying to be all powerful, all understanding, all giving, to all people. Recently, I just started doing a business plan, a solid idea of a business plan for Lifestyle and Flow LLC. Again, that's a whole other story, but the shorter version is the intent was to have that together, a better idea of that business model last year. So a whole year is gone, a whole year has gone by. And so I finally sat down to do that. And so when I read this, I also realized that not really defining that business model, and it just took some time. I needed more creative, ideas. I needed more creative recovery to come to this decision. So I'm not saying that any of the choices that I made to not build the business plan out was any type of mistake at all. It just wasn't the time frame, the time frame of me putting the idea together and getting the LLC. That part made sense. What happened after that, there was just it was just a little convoluted, and I was like, okay, what should I start with first or whatever. All that to say, let me just try to bring it in a little bit better, is that it was part of the journey. The intuitive feeling that I felt without having all the hows and the answers was go ahead and get this LLC registered as a business. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and there was excitement built around that because I was like, oh yeah, this is what it's gonna be and all this type of stuff. And when things didn't align, when the money and the resources didn't quite align to kickstart what I thought it was going to be, I became discouraged. And I'm like, okay, so now what do I do? Well, something great still happened. I created Create Season Studio as just like a small piece of the puzzle that kept me, engaged in the process of building a business and practicing creativity and learning what it's like to be a craft designer. So that was still part of the journey. So as I've kind of circled back around this full year cycle that's just happened, I'm shaking my head right now because I talk about intuition and how I'm usually a year ahead of something in another video, and I realized that I might have to link that one so that you have a little bit more context of what that is too, as I'm thinking out loud. So as I'm here, I had gotten the motivation and the drive to go ahead and start building a business plan for it. And I just kind of tapped away at the computer and like worked on it and created like 2 to 3 different versions. And I finally was able to narrow it down to one. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, well, this isn't all powerful, all understanding, all giving to all people. It really is a niche down, focused, more purpose driven business. So that's what came out of that. It's a purpose driven business. And so purpose driven businesses and business models, they look different than some of the other businesses out there. And so I wanted to spend some time nurturing that. And so that's what I did the past week. Last week, was it this week or last week? Last week, I did finally put some finishing touches on it. And after I did that, I was able to kind of break some things down and say to myself, well, what is the next right step now that this part is done? So that's what I'm working on. All the next right steps to kick this off. And I'm reluctant to talk about the details right now because it's such a baby. It's such a baby, and you got to protect your babies until you're ready to collaborate and share it with people that can actually be a part of the journey. So I'm not quite there yet, but that is something that I'm working on. Anyway, so when I read this, so I'm back to this again. It says God can work no miracles in our lives because we never allow the time or space to let a divine hand enter our affairs. And I just thought about all the, start and stops. And yeah, there are some natural and unnatural things that have happened along the way that have kept, things at bay, even my own confidence level, so many things that have kept this particular business idea, or the idea of me really defining it from happening. It's been so many distractions, so many of them, and it was almost unbearable. I didn't quite think that I would ever get to a point where moving forward with it made any sense. And so there was a struggle there with that. But yeah, I'm at a place where I don't want to be pouring out more than I'm pouring in. And when you're pouring into yourself, there's got to be, some time for it to land, for it to resonate, for it to heal, And I feel like sometimes when we're on journeys like this, where you're a little bit more hidden in life and kind of like behind the scenes and hidden in life, you can get a little discouraged, like you're always going to be here in this space, But I really don't want to come out until I'm really ready, until the healing has really landed where it's supposed to land, and the pouring out is out of being full. That's what I'm trying to say. I would want the pouring out of me being full. So it's a little off tangent a little bit in the topic that I thought this was going to go, but that happens a lot when I press record and just allow myself to speak and be heard in spaces, even if it's just me speaking out loud to myself. So I just wanted to share that as part of my reflection today and my self-talk. I call these self-talk sessions. And just taking this moment to be in the present and allow myself to feel all the things. There's a level of grief and sadness. There's a level of determination and motivation that's behind this. And, as I'm redefining my routine, I'm also redefining as I'm redefining my routine, I'm also redefining my boundaries. And I realize that a lot of areas of my boundaries where I have said certain things or intended for certain things to be like a line in the sand and just say, no, that's not for me. I'm not going to allow this. I noticed that I have slipped in some of those areas. And so now I have to ask myself, why? Why am I allowing these certain boundaries to be pushed? So that's where I am now, and I am redefining that and putting some firm no's back, because I need this energy for me. I need this energy for my purpose-driven vocation. My purpose-driven vocation, business, whatever it is that I'm here to do, I need that time back towards me. And if I pour out too much too soon, then there's not going to be a whole lot left for me to tap into when I need it. And that is the lesson for me this morning. And so I've got some work to do. And this work, it isn't drudgery. It is determination, it's drive, and it's with the idea of being patient, being loving to myself, and not pushing myself in a critical way, not using negative self-talk to try and produce outcomes. This is about me allowing myself to tap into my intuition by being nice to myself, being kind and nice to myself, first and foremost, before I start giving myself away to others. So that's the plan, that's the idea, and I'm sticking to it.